Okay, we've hit the 1,000 participant mark, so I'm going to get us started. And I think quite a few people will still join. Welcome to this webinar on the variations form for human medicinal products and what will happen at go live. This is a session through WebEx. We'll be taking questions through Slido. More on that in a little bit. First of all, we've got the welcome and introduction by myself, Joel Wiemer. I'm change management lead here at EMA, and also indeed involved with the DADI project and the PMS project quite a bit. Then I'd like to invite Carl Hamilton to say a little bit about the web forms as part of the data-centric target operating model. And Carl Hamilton indeed is the product lifecycle management value stream owner at EMA. And we've got Hannes, who is the value stream manager for that same value stream, talking a little bit about the timeline and some of the adjustments we've made to the timeline, not to the go live, mind you, but indeed to the timeline and some of the planning of some of the major milestones going up to go live. Then we will have the product owners, Christina, Noel, Marcos, and Veronica, talk about indeed the impact for applicants and regulators, and also what the process will look like for the variations web form at go live. We've allowed for quite a bit of time to answer Q&A sessions, and we'll be looking to close by 12. Now, note that this session is being recorded. For those of you that had joined a minute before, you'll have heard the sound in WebEx, indeed, with the announcement that it is being recorded. We will indeed be inviting interaction through Slido throughout. Participation in Slido is voluntary. However, indeed, it is how we will be running the questions and answers. This, again, is how you join Slido. You can either scan the QR code on your phone, or you can simply open another window, navigate to slido.com, and indeed put in that number, #016740, to go to the correct session. Now, Slido has a feature to upvote questions that other people in the call have asked. We will be making heavy use of this feature and indeed be prioritizing the questions with more upvotes. So if you've got a question, by all means ask it. However, please also have a look whether anybody else has asked that question or a similar question, and then we will make sure that and that'll make sure that that question is more likely to get answered, rather than indeed having the same question 10, 20, 30 times. This is not to stop you from asking your questions. By all means, do so. However, indeed, it is to try and make sure that we answer the questions that are most pertinent, most urgent for the largest group of participants. The questions themselves, indeed, will be visible through Slido, and we'll be putting them up on the screen during the dedicated Q&A session. For those of you that indeed have not yet joined the Slido, you will find indeed also the code to the Slido and the access to Slido at the bottom right hand of every slide. So in case that you missed out on the code. So with that, we're going to get started. Now, first off about DADI. For those of you that are hearing about DADI for the first time, or indeed have joined this webinar without an idea of what the Digital Application Dataset Network project is, it is the project to replace the current interactive PDF format, electronic application forms, with new web-based forms, and they will be hosted on a dedicated portal. Now, one of the questions we've been getting is whether that portal already has a name. It does not yet. But it will. Now, the new web forms will facilitate compliance with ISO IDMP, and they will provide a human readable PDF output, which is in line indeed with the Notice to Applicants Expert Group requirements. The Notice to Applicants Expert Group, of course, is the one that sets the content for these electronic application forms. The PDF output will also contain a machine-readable component with a larger data set in the so-called FIRE XML format. And this FIRE XML format facilitates the exchange of the application's information across different systems for regulators and also for applicants. So what will DADI change? It'll change the PDF format to web forms. It'll do so for human and veterinary forms, and it'll do so for centrally authorized products and nationally authorized products. DADI will not change the output format. So whereas you'll be using a web form indeed for the input, the output will still be a PDF. It'll also not touch the variations or marketing authorizations applications submission processes. So indeed, we're talking primarily about a technology change at this point. And the content of the application form will still need to be part of the submissions package. So that's indeed is what you'll see coming out of this form. And of course, initially, and the go live that we're talking about is specifically for the variations form for human medicinal products. So the variations form for veterinary medicinal products will be done in a later iteration, as will be initial marketing authorization, as will renewals. Now, PMS is product management services, and this is part of the SPORE program, which is probably familiar to a lot of the audience as well. This is another network project led by EMA in cooperation with European Medicines Regulatory Network and industry, and it is meant to indeed enable the implementation of the globally recognized ISO standards. So indeed, the web form will use or will come to use indeed more and more PMS data elements. It is a comprehensive and dedicated medicinal product data for centrally authorized products and non-centrally authorized products. It is a trusted and good quality source of data, or will become indeed a trusted and good quality source of data. It also supports the target operating model that EMA and regulators indeed will have for managing medicinal product data. More on that indeed from Carl in a bit. And it will eventually indeed replace the Article 57 submission process data format and data content. So PMS will enable IDMP implementation. It will be the content and format of authorized medicinal product data used in the web forms, Article 57 submissions, and other systems. And it will change the process for Article 57 submission eventually. PMS will not change the process to apply for, submit, or approve marketing authorization applications, and it will not change the legal requirements for Article 57 submission. So with that brief refresher on what DADI and PMS are, I will hand over to Carl Hamilton, the product lifecycle management value stream owner, who will tell us a little bit about the web forms as part of the data-centric target operating model.
Thanks, Joris. So good morning, everyone. I'd like to add my welcome to everyone who joined the webinar today and to those who are watching the recording afterwards. To introduce myself, my name is Carl Hamilton. I'm head of digital change at EMA in our digital business transformation task force. And I'm also the value stream owner for the product lifecycle management value stream, which I'll put into context in the following slides, together with our vision for product lifecycle management at EMA. So many of you will be aware that EMA has embarked upon a radical change in the way it delivers projects. And this means that all delivery work in the future will operate according to scaled agile or safe practices. What this means for the DADI and PMS projects, as you'll see in the following slide, is that they're both now part of what we call our product lifecycle management value stream. And that's one of 5 value streams at EMA designed to bring together the development and maintenance of highly related products and systems with the goal of optimizing business value, such as the DADI and PMS projects. So Joris, if you move to the following slide. Why are we moving to this mode of delivery? Well, it's really to help us achieve a really highly focused portfolio management practice to scale and speed up delivery manage changing priorities, and have priority-based planning. And that in turn is designed to improve transparency and communications around decision-making, improve business and IT alignment, and really focus on value for the people on this call and for our colleagues across EMA as well. The transition to Agile is ongoing, and the approach has been piloted with Data and PMS, which is why we're mentioning it today, but it's gradually expanding to include a number of other existing products and projects. For more information on the transition to Agile specifically and how it operates and the governance around that, there are dedicated pages on our corporate website. So what does this mean for Data and PMS? Well, they're key enablers for this digital transformation. And what's important to be aware of in this webinar is that the release of the first version of the Human Variations data form later this year will be done in an Agile spirit and using Agile delivery. So the product team will continue to build and develop new features that will be released in the future, gradually building towards an integrated set of data forms that cover the scope of the existing electronic application forms in use. So this will entirely replace the current way of working around that side of things. On the following slide, you'll see a brief vision that we have here. It's to transform and optimize regulatory procedure management across the product lifecycle. And this is to unlock more value together with our partners and stakeholders, those of you on the call, ultimately for the benefit of public and animal health in the EU, which is why we operate. And some of the drivers around this, we recognize that digital transformation of EMA and the European Medicines Regulatory Network is required to keep us future ready. We want to bring in more modern, integrated ways of managing activities across the product lifecycle. We want to drive efficiencies as well by seamlessly connecting people, processes, and data through technology. And you'll see that a little bit later as well. We want to reduce manual overheads to allow colleagues to focus on knowledge work rather than manual interventions. A lot of our systems have developed organically over the years according to needs, and now we're working to integrate them further. We want to promote better use of quality data throughout the product lifecycle by promoting structured data capture, processing, analysis, and reuse, and also promoting standards and automated exchange of information to unlock new use cases for the EU. And then, of course, ultimately to fulfill the agency's mission towards public and animal health in the European Union. So on the following slide, we have a very short, high-level description of what we see as our data-centric target operating model. And this is ultimately what Data and PMS are a core part of helping us to achieve. So starting from the point of submission on the left, what this means is capturing data for regulatory procedure management, as I mentioned, through modern integrated interfaces and web forms, so data, that are user-friendly, that are powered by structured quality data that's been fed from our master data management services, so mainly PMS in this case, to simplify the process for applicants and also work together with our e-submission systems, which you'll be familiar with. It means providing human and machine interfaces as appropriate to cater for the needs of different stakeholders using agreed exchange formats such as FHIR and ECTD. Once the data is captured, we're working to build on our integrated regulatory information system, also known as IRIS. This is to transform the way teams work on the validation, assessment, and analysis of the data, allowing them to reduce manual overheads and focus on knowledge work, as I mentioned. And this is to replace legacy systems that don't always work in an integrated way. Data that's captured will be stored using agreed standards as part of master data management. We had a reference from yours around ISO IDMP, for example. And the intention here is, of course, to make sure that it can be securely stored and exchanged to provide integrated regulatory data across the lifecycle. Sharing and reusing this data across the product management lifecycle is expected to unlock new use cases that will benefit public and animal health in the EU in the future. An example of this is the EPI, the Electronic Product Information Project, which isn't the focus of today, but is something that we're working on to really leverage this digital transformation for new use cases. And here along the bottom, we're also committed to putting our customers and stakeholders at the center of what we do. So, of course, citizens first to ensure safe and effective medicines for human and veterinary use are on the market in Europe. And so the EMA and national regulators can do their work using reliable and efficient systems using quality data. Of course, healthcare providers benefiting from having access to the information they need for their work in a timely way, and providing industry stakeholders with an integrated way of working with European regulators so that Europe can be at the forefront of global medicines regulation. And really, this is at the core of what we want to achieve, is keep the customer centricity throughout this digital transformation that we're embarking on. So I'll now pass to Hannes Kulowitz, who's our value stream manager for product lifecycle management. He will tell you more about the timelines for the release of the first forms in DADI and what's coming next. So I'll pass over to you, Hannes.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Carl. So my name is Hannes Kulowitz, and I'm a digital business transformation manager here at EMA. And as Carl mentioned, in the context of Scaled Agile, I am a value stream manager for the product lifecycle management value stream. So I would now like to give you the most important dates for the go live of the DADI Human Variation Forum, for Human Variations Forum. As we already communicated in our last webinar, we plan to go live with the DADI Variations Forum this October. So this is the milestone you can see almost in the very center of this visual, named Launch of Variations Web Form. With the release of this of the web form, you will be able to create variation forms in the new web application and export the content to PDF and IDMP FHIR. What this exactly means and how this will work, we will present to you in much more detail throughout this webinar. Towards the release of the web form in October, we will also release the final FHIR specification. So the scheduled release date for the final FHIR specification is July 2022. Before we go live with the web form in October, we will conduct an external user acceptance test, which will commence beginning of September. So this is one of the adjustments we made in the recent month to allow more time to incorporate feedback we get from the limited UAT and further stabilize the system. This UAT will be the final testing once the limited UAT, which we are currently running, is completed. So for this UAT, we are also looking for a much wider group of future end users who can support us in testing the web form. We will soon reach out with a call for interest with more details on this user acceptance test. The go live date will be followed by a 6-month transition period lasting until April 2023. During the transition period, both the old electronic application form as well as the web-based DADI form can be used to submit variations. After the transition period, the usage of the web form for submitting variations will become mandatory, and the old EAF form will be decommissioned. For the successful use of the variations form released this October, the cleansing or enrichment of product data, which was previously submitted to XEVMPD, is not required. So it's an important note here. The capabilities required for data cleansing and enrichment in PMS will be released together with structured product updates within the EAF in 2023. This is the second major release you see on this this timetable, and this release will allow updating data elements of your products as part of the variation, and the reuse of variation forms to submit product data to PMS. Also important to note here is that following the October go live of the variation web form, XEVMPD submissions will still be required. So between these two major releases, we also foresee regular maintenance releases, most likely every quarter. So this also brings in already, this new way of working that we are currently implementing, that Carl mentioned, so that we have more regular releases that we that we publish. The intermediary releases will mainly focus on further improving the system and consider feedback we receive from users. So one thing you also see on the timeline here is the other web forms we are implementing, so veterinary variations, initial marketing authorization, renewals, and so on. So we are soon starting the preparation work for them. Yeah, we will also publish more information at a later stage here. On the next slide, you can see basically everything I just said, just in a bit more wordy way. So you can use this slide since we will publish them later and go through them in your own time. Yeah, so you find maybe also a little bit more detail, here. With that, I would like to hand over to our product owners, Christina, Noel, Marcus, and Veronica. They will present the impact this Go Live has for applicants and regulators. And I believe Christina is starting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hannes, and welcome everyone. So I'm Christina Pusari. I'm one of the DADI product owners from the EMA. And I would like to present to you just a few slides on what will really happen and what are the impacts of the change at the Go Live.
All right, Christina, let me start off for you. We do have a slide where I can give a brief overview. And
that's okay. No, we're here. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll start on what's new at the Go Live. So of course, as my colleagues have already mentioned, we will have a web-based electronic variation application form available. One of the very important steps to be able to use this form is that you will now have to register and provide access via the EMA access management system that we often refer to as IAM. So this is really a key step and a prerequisite to be able to access the form. So everybody will have to register. So it's very important to bear in mind that you no longer have access to the forms like you have today, where the PDFs are available on our eSubmissions website. And you also manage and share your data sets online. So if you are editing the form, you can share the form with your colleagues, but they also need to be registered with IAM and you share the access through that system. When you enter the form, you will, and the portal as such, you will see the redesigned user experience, and the filling in the forms will be slightly different than in the past. So instead of manual input, you'll be selecting, for example, you'll select the product, and in most cases where today you would type into a free text field, you will be selecting values from a drop-down menu. So obviously this will streamline the editing process quite a bit. The product selection, as I mentioned, and the package selection will be from PMS. So you no longer type in manually the product details or the product EU numbers or the authorization numbers. And after you have finished editing the form, you will generate or you will export a PDF, and the PDF will contain a new Fire XML attachment. So there will be a single output that you will add into your ECTD package. And in future, of course, also into the VNIS package. This packet, as this document is still PDF, there should be no impact to the ECTD validation. So this is just a PDF document. But the benefit of that PDF document is that it's a PDF rendition without all the multiple validation rules and data behind it. So they will open much faster. So there is benefit, of course, to the applicants and to the regulators. Behind the scenes, there is the IDMP data model. And you will also be at the Go Live able to enter the IDMP compliant devices and name parts. So we will introduce as almost like a proof of concept some structured data fields already in this early version of the forms. So if we then look at the impacts for the applicants and consultancies and the go live. So for the ways of working, as I mentioned, we have the prerequisite that you will need to register to access the application forms, and you will also need to choose the level of access for your users. So we will have different kind of access rights for different users. So you can be an applicant manager, the author, or a contributor, and depending on your access level rights, you will see different products, or you'll be able to add products or not. And of course, important for consultancies, or if you are working on behalf of another company, you will need to engage with the marketing authorization holder to ensure that you have access to the necessary medicinal product, so you can edit the forms as needed. Of course, training will be provided, so you will need to be familiar with the new web application functionalities for both applicants and consultancies. So as long as you're editing the form, you should be trained. Of course, we're trying to ensure that the portal and the form is very much self-explanatory and it'll be easy to use. There will also be tooltips and information buttons, but there will of course be training and training guides available as well. From the technology point of view, you will need to have a compliant web browser, and of course you can have additional plugins. This may be autofill of addresses, or sorry, not addresses, contact persons that you regularly use, and such plugins that are often familiar when you're filling in web-based forms. And of course, instead of document management system and emailing PDF forms across to other colleagues who need to provide input, now everything is managed within the web forms. And of course, with regards to the data, because the selection is from PMS and PMS data comes from Article 57 database, it's really important that all medicinal products are registered in XEV MPD, and the product selection can only happen to those products that are already available in that database. So, and also very important to note that marketing authorization holders will only be able to select products of their respective organizations. Of course, if you are given rights by a different organization, you can then select products on behalf of that organization, which is also the scenario for the consultancies. As mentioned here, so you have to be associated to all marketing authorization holders in the EMA access management system with an appropriate role in order to draft the applications for your marketing authorization holders. And then on the next slide, we will have a look at the pains and gains for the users first for the applicants. So here, so on the short term, if we look at the gains, so obviously you'll have usability improvements of the forms. So there's less waiting time for the lists to load. A lot of the data is already pre-populated. If you think today's interactive PDF form, we already connect into RMS and OMS. So we'll be doing that in future in the web form as well, but even more so. And in most cases, you'll have either drop-down menus or radio buttons, tick boxes. So there will be very minimum amount of data to be typed in as such. Then, of course, on the long term, you'll gain a lot more benefits. So there will be a streamlined application interface that will contain all application forms. You're using predictable, standardized data, which means less errors and, of course, less validation errors. So there will be faster processing of applications. So less validation questions, but also the variation procedure can be potentially run faster way. And in future, of course, one of our very awaited features will be the machine-to-machine solutions based on IDMP and FHIR, which will then, of course, facilitate the data exchange. Unfortunately, before we can get to all these gains, there may be some pains on the short term and also perhaps on the long term. So, of course, initially you'll have different tools to be used until all of the PDF-based forms have been transitioned and decommissioned. So you'll have different processes, and of course, during the transition period and even after the transitional period, if a variation has started using the PDF form, we will not ask you to transition into the web-based form in the middle of the procedure. So you'll have different formats for the forms for a time being. Of course, the change process will require some knowledge and ramping up and trainings. There will be the need for registration and access management, and every time you'll have a new user or user leaves, so you need to ensure that the access rights are maintained and kept correct. And of course, on the long term, the IDMP requires more structural input. So instead of this free text. So this will, of course, increase the data quality, but it may mean a little bit more work. But because we know that it leads into good quality data and less errors, I would say it's definitely worth the effort. Then on the next slide, we'll be looking at the gains and pains for our regulators. So of course, for the users, so when we look at the business colleagues working in the regulatory agencies, the PDFs will be opening faster, and but we also need to bear in mind that is a change. There may be changes to the versions of the forms during an ongoing procedure. With the PDF, we always ask you to keep on using the version that you had when you started the variation. In future, of course, when you have a web-based form, if there's a version change during the variation, the version may change. So we'll also provide details on how to manage ongoing procedures during an update of the form, so if new fields appear and so forth. But this is something that will be impacting the regulatory users. And then, of course, for IT directors, they need to be ensured that they're familiar with the agile methodology that the EMA uses, so that they are able to adapt to the new FHIR releases. Then the regulatory users, they will need to be supporting applicants in filling in the variation form. So of course, they will also need some level of training on the web form application functionalities. But of course, we will have the EMA service desk, which will be able to help the users. So only in a very specific scenarios that may be impacting a specific regulatory agency, the business users may be required to help the applicants. And of course, for the IT directors, they will need to build knowledge on the FHIR standard. Then for the business users, there is not much impact technology-wise, because of course there's a PDF form today, and there will be a PDF rendition in future. So the only impact really is that it will open faster. Whereas for the IT directors, of course, the change from the data exchange standard, the DES, to FHIR will needs to be implemented into the IT systems where NCAs import data into their own regulatory IT systems. And with regards to the data, the product in section 2 in future in the web-based form are selected from PMS. So the data quality is really dependent on the data that is available from the XEVMPD. So it's no longer possible to manually enter your product in that field. So if the product is not in the database, you're not able to select it and proceed with your application. So it's really important to ensure that the data quality in the Article 57 is good. And of course, for the IT directors, it's important to note that the data structures for the products have been refactored to be IDMP compliant. So I believe that's all from me, and I will hand over to my colleague Noel. Oh, sorry. Oh, I still have one more slide, which is the regulator pains and gains. So if we look at the gains from the regulator side, so of course we're enabling more efficient processing, which will reduce errors and discrepancies. So hopefully the validation will be much easier and quicker in future. There will be easier systems interoperability and data sharing because we'll all be using and reusing that same good quality IDMP compliant data. We're ensuring a standardized data entry. So this is really one of the main improvements here. And as Carl mentioned earlier, it's really moving towards that data-centric operating model where we use and reuse good quality data. And of course, the implementation fulfills the legal requirement according to the IDMP. Of course, while we're moving to this approach, there will be still some pains also for the regulators. So, of course, it's the change effort to migrate from DES to the XML standards, and the fact that we will have parallel data standards during the transitioning from the legacy DES into the FHIR format. So if there are ongoing procedures, we will probably have to look at some point how long we can continue supporting the PDF forms. I've understand from my colleagues, especially for the national procedures, a procedure can run over several years, so we need to look at how long can we continue supporting those. But all of that will be, of course, explained in detail at Go Live and after that. And of course, there will be multiple changes expected to the FHIR because it's a very new standard. So we are really learning and developing as we are developing the forms. So there will be changes. And that, of course, will mean more changes in the IT systems for the regulators. And of course, the full benefits of the data imports are only reached when all data elements are structured and fed back to PMS. So there will be a period of time when we don't really see the structured data flowing back into PMS and being reused in its full extent. But once we are a little bit more mature, this will all bring the full benefits of this exercise. Thank you. I now hand over to my colleague Noel.
Thank you very much, Christina. Good morning from my side as well. I hope the transition and what happens at Go Live is clear now. Christina gave a very good overview. The impacts were split into applicants and NCAs, or as regulators, because EMA is involved as well. If you do have any questions, please ask them in Slido. I've been together, well, the entire team has been trying to answer as many as possible, but there will be some time at the end where we will go through them, of course. Now, I will be giving you just a brief overview on what does the form contain and how does it feel like to fill it in. But first of all, I want to stress the part that we are not changing the business process. So submissions of EF, the evaluation, submissions of XCV and PD, they're all going to stay the same. We have split our, let's just stay on the main slide. We have split our releases into two parts. Joris has mentioned this as well. I just want to reiterate. We are going to release a technology change with all the changes that Christina has mentioned in October, and we have a second release at the end of next year, or where we have what we call something like structure changes. So where you can change your medicinal product. Even though we have changed our methodology to being agile, we could, in theory, release every part of the medicinal product one by one. We got the feedback from the representatives of the industry associations that we would please only release this once it is fully done together with PMS. Meaning the first release in October is a pre-release or just mirroring what we have today in PMS, in PDF, just a little bit sleeker and with, of course, web technology. And there are some major benefits, but we are not introducing the change of the medicinal product as of yet. So having a brief look at what you actually do when you have the EF in October. First of all, you have to log in. And this is probably the largest change that we have. It is an online form, meaning we will give you a period of 2-3 months beforehand where you can register, set up your IAM account, see that all people in your organizations, and if you use any kind of consultancies, they all have their appropriate accounts, so that when we go live, they can already log in. So when you do log in, the first thing you have to do now is search for your product. As you know, the PDF today, you just type in whatever product you have. Now, with the feature Christina has mentioned, we would rather select than type things in. And we do this for as many things as possible, meaning even the PMS product. What we're using here is the initial migration from XCV-MPD to PMS and SIAMET to PMS, meaning everything that EMA knows today will be there in PMS. So if people are compliant with the current processes, you will find your product and you can just select it. There is no need to type it in. Once you have selected your product, you then go on to say, what are you changing? Meaning you select from the RMS list of scopes. This is similar to the way you do today. We have introduced this change in the PDF a while ago, so people should already be familiar with this. The only difference is the order has changed. So first your product, then your scope, and then most of the procedural information will be filled in for you. We want to reduce the possibilities for errors, and we want to reduce the time it takes for validation. So procedural information is filled in as much as possible. We then go on. We had the request for scopes to be able to be linked to packages. So we accommodate central procedures, of course, MRP procedures and national procedures with the web forms. And we try to have features for all of them. And mostly they are the same. So you will now be able to link exactly which scope is affecting which packaged product. This is relevant especially for centralized products, but can be done for national products as well. Now for MRP, of course, we do just auto-select the packages, so there is no additional work for you. Now, there is this gateway in my process that I'm showing here. In the next release, we want to also be able to change the product. For now, we are starting with this. So we are also learning. Changing a medicinal product online in a web form is something new to all of us. In the past and today, you're still just writing your change as a free text. The regulator goes into their own system and needs to understand your free text and update your medicinal product. Now, the much safer way to do this, of course, is for you to just update it yourself. And this will be possible only after the next release. When we talk go live, you type in the PDF as it is today, with the only two small differences on medical devices, and we are trying to do name parts as well. So on medical devices, there was the medical device regulation just a few months back, and they give you the opportunity in section 4D at the moment in the PDF to enter the data on medical devices that have changed. Now, at the same time, IDMP came along, and they also want specific fields for medical devices. We are very glad that they line up, mostly. So apart from 2 or 3 fields, they are exactly the same fields that you know. The only thing is the structure has changed slightly. So we will give some guidance, but we have changed the look and feel of the medical device. So once we have the full PMS integration, this can already be used to feed back to PMS. Now for name parts, this is the first section that we're looking at, mostly as a prototype to understand how to do PMS changes online. We are looking to release this as well. if everything goes right until October, but if for whatever reason something goes wrong, we will release it together with all the other structured name parts at the end of next year. Now, the difference to today is not much, because you can still enter your proposed change as free text. In October, you write your present data, you write your proposed data. It's just a web form, that's all. For devices, you still enter your data, but you don't do as much free text. You just fill in structured forms. It tells you already what you need to fill in, and you go ahead and type it. After both of these things are done, you can click on a button to export to a PDF. What happens in the background is that it firstly creates a file message. This file message is then transformed into a PDF, meaning file and PDF will always be the same. They cannot deviate from each other. The other thing is that the PDF is then really just a view of an XML, a pretty view. It looks like the PDF looks like today, but it also means it opens up a lot faster. And this is what Christina showed us on the impact. So these are the main benefits. I hope that this webinar takes away the fear that something is expected of you. All that really is expected is that the product is an XCV MPD at Go Live and that you have an EMA account. Now, I wanted to just show you how it looks like to select a product. So if we go back to this first step, you search for your medicinal product. At the moment, this is how the web form looks like. So there's a little screenshot. You will be able to do some sort of Google-like search, and we give you various fields to find your product. You can search it by name. If you don't expect you to already know the PMS ID, but we show it because in the future you might know it. You can search by active substance, by the authorization, so the marketing authorization number, and we expect this would be the main field that you search your product by. You can search by MRP or DCP number, by marketing authorization holder, by authorization country, and we show that the status of the product, and we only show valid authorized products. Now, this is quite useful because of our integration with PMS and IAM. This means your available products are already pre-filtered to the MAH you have logged in with. So when you log in into IAM, you already belong to a specific organization. We know this because you have told us when you created your account with EMA. Now you can belong to many organizations. That's not an issue at all. And we will show the sum of all products of all locations on your organizations. So for huge companies, this might be a larger list, which is why we have the search. For smaller companies, you only have 1, 2, 3 products in here, so the search is not even needed. You just select. You can, of course, go to the ribbon All Products, where you will see all 550,000 products registered. So in case you don't find your product in your own list, you can check the All Products tab on where it is. The second part where you do some selection is when you select your packages. Now you do, first of all, choose your medicinal products, choose your scopes and link them together. And then we already know which packages belong to these products. Now the data we have today is mainly from central products and from those MRP products that have an authorization on package level. For the MRP products that don't have that, at the time being in October, we will have just one combined package. With next year, where we will start data cleansing, and we expect the data quality in PMS to get better and better over the time, we are prepared for it in this form. And once you have all the packages, you will see them as they trickle into PMS. Now, there is this rare thing where you can't find your product. As mentioned, we will show you the products you own or that belong to you. But in case you cannot find it, there are three options. First of all, your product is just not in your list. This means you can go to the All Products tab and search it for there. If it's not there, it means you haven't submitted it yet to XCV-MPD for whatever reason. Or maybe you have a herbal or homeopathic product that you want to change, which is not really necessary to submit to XCV-MPD, but you can do this anyway because we want to give the opportunity to use the web form for all medicinal products. If information is wrong or is missing on your product, there's not going to be much information. We will show which fields exactly in a few slides. You can also update your submission to XCV-MPD, and it will be synchronized to PMS in a very short time. Now, this can be a minute, it can be 10 minutes. We still have to test this in a production environment, and we're pretty sure it will not take more than 15. So it is real-time synchronization. The third option is that you can see your product in the All Products tab, but you can't select it. This means you just don't have the right, you don't own that product, meaning you're not associated to an MAH that this product belongs to. Now, this could be because you're a consultancy that was not authorized yet. And it means you need to contact the MAH who owns that product and ask them to get access. This is done in IAM. IAM is the Identity and Access Management System, where you choose the role that you want to have. So we will give you 3 options of visibility. You choose one of them, you choose the MAH, you request it, and the MAH will give you access. As soon as this is done, you will then see the product in your list. As easy as that. Now, what happens after that? So you can just continue with your variation. You will put your variation, your PDF in your ECD package and then submit it. Now, you still have to update XCV-MPD, and this is where my colleague from PMS, Marcus, will give you a brief overview on when to update what part.
Okay, thank you very much, Noel. So yeah, as Noel was explaining, well, he has already explained everything that you have to do from the beginning. So you have to search your product, you need to fill your variation, you need to put it into your ECTD sequence, submit it, and then your assessment procedure is going to be the same as until now. So there is no change there. So what I'm going to explain now is what happened when the variation is approved. So there is your assessment process, the variation, you are lucky your variation is approved. And then you need to provide the data that has been changed. So here we have 3 different options, depending if we have a structured data that has been impacted due to the variation or not. So in the case where not structured data, so no data from PMS or from XCV-MPD is impacted, you don't have to do anything else. The procedure has finished and you don't have to submit anything else. That would be, for example, if you have a variation on impurities, impurities information is not on XCV-MPD or in PMS, so you don't have to do anything else. Then what happens if you have a variation where data from XCV-MPD is impacted? So for example, you have a variation on excipients or you have a variation on the indications. In this case, you still need to provide the data to XCV-MPD. So after the variation is approved, you have 30 days to provide this data to XCV-MPD, you submit it, and this is the end of the process as well. Now, in this case, it's important for you to understand that at the moment of go live, PMS is going to be fed by XCV-MPD and Sciamed Delta. So any change that happens on XCV-MPD or on Sciamed will be fed back to PMS and we will update this data. So any change that you do in XCV-MPD following the current process, those changes will be reflected in PMS as part of the deltas. And there, if there is any of the fields that DADI will be using from PMS at the moment of go live, this data will be, you will be able to see this update in the next variation when you create your next variation form. In the following slides, I will show you which are these fields, but for the moment, it's important for you to know that if there is a change in XVMPD or in SciAmed, this data will be reflected on PMS. What happened if you have a variation on a field, which is a structured data, but is not in XVMPD? So for example, you have a change on storage conditions or on legal status of supply. This is data that is part of PMS, but as this data is not in XVMPD, you don't have to do anything else because for the moment, we are just following the current process where XVMPD has to be updated. In the next variation, therefore, when you create your new when you open your new DADI variation form, you won't see this updated data because for the moment we are not able to retrieve this data from the DADI variation form. Yeah, so as you already know, from PMS, we are migrating all the data that we have in Article 57 and in SciAmed, and we are migrating this data into SciAmed. Into PMS. So we have all this data in PMS. Nevertheless, at the moment of go live, DADI will only show several fields from PMS into the DADI variation form. Those are the fields that you have here. So the first one will be the name. In this case, DADI will show you the invented name that we have in Article 57. There are cases, as you know, that we might not have an invented name in Article 57. So DADI will show you a concatenation of the generic name, the INN, plus the marketing authorization applicant. Obviously, for CAPs, we will have the full name in English, and for MRP, DCPs, and NAPs, where we have the several names because we have several languages into the same country, then you will see only one name as submitted in XVMPD. We recommend you to search by the MA number when you log into the DADI platform to look for your products because it's easier and it would be more easy to find your product if you use the MA number. You will be able to see also the strength part of the name. So if it's empty, then you won't have anything, but you will be able to see this part. You will be also able to see the authorized dose form. In this case, we are not using the name part, but we are using the RMS term from the authorized dose form. You will be able to see the domain. In the DADI variation form, you will only be able to see human products. Then we have the PMS ID and the MP IDs for your medicinal products. These are generated by PMS and will be shown in the DADI variation form. More information that is shown in DADI, you will see the active substance or a concatenation of all the active substances from your product. The MA number, as we said, this is the best way to search for your product. Here in this case, as you might, and you already know, in Article 57, we have MA numbers at package level for some countries where the NCA provides the MA number at the level of the pack. But in some NCAs and for some products, we only have the MA number at the level of the medicinal product. So if you have a product where the MA number is assigned to the package and there is no root number, you will be able to see this MA number at the level of the pack. There is more information on this on chapter 2, and we will be also of the UIG, and we will be also updating this chapter. So we recommend you to go to the chapter 2 of the UIG so you can find all the information there. We will also show the MRP and DCP number as included in Article 57. We will have the marketing authorization holder, as Noel was explaining. We will use this to collect all the products and assign to the specific MA holder. We have the authorization country, the authorization status as well, coming from Article 57. We have the authorization type with all the different scenarios that we have in Article 57. We have the number of packages. This data for the moment is only available for CAPs and for those NAPs where we have the MA number granted at the pack level. And then the pack size, it's data that is currently only available for CAPs and from some NAPs because we are taking this information from the package description, which is for NAPs is an optional field. So not all the products in Article 57 have this data. So as explained, those are the fields that you will be able to see in the DADI variation form coming from PMS. Here you have a reminder of the QRD for the Slido webpage, where you can provide all your questions. I just have one more slide, and then we will go to the Q&A session. So please go to the Slido page. You can raise your question. You can also rate the questions that are already there. So we will be triaging the questions based on the ones that have more votes. So just to give you some conclusions of the webinars that we have presented together with the value stream owner, with the POs for DADI and PMS. In relation to the EAF, Christine and Noel have already explained that you will be able to select your products in the DADI variation form. This product will be coming from PMS, but for the moment at Go Live, there will be only a limited number of structured product data fields that you will be able to change using this the structured data. In the future, as Noel also was explaining, the idea is to be able to change most of the fields using structured data coming from OMS, RMS, SMS, etc. As explained as well, for 6 months, so until April 2023, you will still be able to use the old EAF PDF form, but you can also use the web-based DADI variation form. The implementation of the further structured product data changes is planned for next year, for 2023. We will be giving you more updates on this as soon as we have more information. So please bear with us, and you can have more information on all the web page and all the platforms that we have at DMA. Again, this is only for the variation form. The rest of the procedures, so new MAs, renewals, etc., you can still use the existing PDF forms because they have not changed for the moment. In relation to PMS, as you already know, PMS will contain the data migrated from XEVMPD and SciAmed. At the moment of Go Live, there won't be any corrections or any enrichment needed for the submission of your variations. And as I said before, the updates done to XEVMPD and SciAmed will be reflected in PMS with what we call the deltas. For XEVMPD, the XEVMPD submissions are still required. There is no change on the process, so as soon as your variation is finished, you need to provide your updates to XEVMPD. For all the applicants, in principle, if you are compliant with the Article 57 requirements, you shouldn't provide any additional information to be ready for the DADI Go Live. All your products are already in Article 57. All your packages, if you have an MA number at the at package level, should be in Article 57. Therefore, this information will be available in the DADI variation form. For those medicinal products or those packages that are not yet in Article 57 or in XEVMPD because they are out of scope of Article 57, so for example, herbal, homeopathics, all those type of products, if you want to use the DADI variation form, then you can submit your product to XEVMPD. You can go to the, there is a guidance in for XEVMPD on how to submit all these products. You can follow all these rules, and you will be able to have your products as well in the DADI variation form if you want to use it. Here, this is the last slide. I think I've seen some questions in the chat. If there are some links to the Q&A, also what is FHIR, etc. Here, you will be able to find all the useful information. So you will find information on DADI, what is DADI, the webinar that we have done in the past, a Q&A document with all the relevant questions from DADI, and we will be also updating this with PMS questions. You have also the FHIR draft specifications. You have here the link to the demo that we provided for PMS, and you also have a link to the PMS webpage where we provide a lot of information on and updates, and you also have a link to chapter 2 in case you need to know how the data will be shown and which is the data that we will have in PMS. And with that, Joris, back to you.
Thank you, Marcos. So indeed, this presentation will be shared. So indeed, then you'll indeed be able to follow all these links. Just about all these links, of course, also available on the website. So at this point, indeed, we'll move to the Slido session. I know we've received a lot of questions, and Christina will start sharing her screen and moderate the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Joris, for giving me the floor. So first of all, I would like to thank on behalf of the Data and PMS project teams, all the attendees to this session who have been very active in sending their questions throughout all the session, and we have received more than 150. We have tried to answer to them as much as possible in writing. But of course, we will try during this live Q&A to address more. So now you should be able to see my screen. Okay, so we will pick those questions that have been most voted by the audience throughout the session. Please feel free also during this live Q&A to tune in to Slido. You can use the code that you see here, 016740. You can join by the QR or slido.com and continue throughout this live Q&A to upvote the questions that you see on the screen, but also to send new questions. Just for everybody to know, we will, of course, pick some of them and include them in our Q&A document. Of course, we won't be able to pick all, but we will consider them for integration. So I will start from the first one. So this has been the most voted question from 83 attendees. When will training material be ready for the industry, considering October is go live? So first of all, let me explain also that we are planning further webinars following this one. As anticipated by yours, the presentation will be shared after this webinar. It will be available from the eSubmission website and the EMA corporate website. So all the materials from past webinars are there. Please also check the eSubmission website for further announcements about webinars, demos, and training sessions we will have in the next months and that we are planning with our product owners, as well as for the announcement of the updated Q&A that is planned for the end of the month. I don't know if Christina, Noel, as daily product owners, you want to mention any other specific appointment like the system demo for training purposes?
And maybe just quickly mention, indeed, we do have regular system demos after each increment, and we are, of course, planning to do some training videos, but we're also hoping to have some training materials ready for the user acceptance testing, which will start in September, so that we can, in a way, test already the training materials as well in that context of the UAT, which will also help the users participating in that testing.
Thank you very much, Christina. Okay, so moving on to the second question. If only products which are part of the PMS can be selected for variation, how to submit a variation after 30 days after finalization of DCP if the MAs are not granted yet? Depending on the countries, it takes a while to receive the MAs. So I don't know, maybe Christina, in cooperation with some PMS colleagues, can address this question.
Actually, maybe I can take it if you don't mind. So yeah, we are aware that you need to provide all the XCVMPD. Your product has to be submitted to XCVMPD, so it will be reflected in PMS and therefore can be selected in the DADI variation form. It is also important to understand that you can provide the data to XCVMPD even if you don't have the MA letter. You can provide a document stating if you can prove that this has been approved with the MA number and also the date of the approval, you can provide this information to XCVMPD, so it will be used for the validation of this product. Once you have received the marketing authorization letter, you can update your product and you can include this document into XCVMPD. So it's important for you to understand that as soon as you provide the data to XCVMPD, so the sooner the better, so you will be able to have your products in the variation form.
Thank you very much, Marcus, for your answer. Okay, I see that in the meanwhile we are getting more questions, more upvoting. So you see the ranking is changing live. Okay, so we now have the third question. That is, a group variation might require hundreds or thousands of MAs to be selected. Is it possible to upload a list of my products?
I can take that one.
Please, Noel, yes.
I believe I can even do better than upload a list, because we can now select from PMS and using filters to select from PMS. I don't know if I can share my screen for a second there. And then you take it back, maybe?
Yes, please.
Let's do a brief live show. So if this is the selection from PMS, what you can see here is a list of medicinal products, and these are my products. At the moment, I'm just a UAT user, so I see my marketing authorization is UAT, but assuming I want to select all products from my location 11, what I do here is I filter on location 11, and I click select all products. I remove the filter, and then I say, okay, and I want to select all from location 21. And again, I can just select all of them. So I can use filters and selections rather than just typing in my product. I do hope this is quite a lot faster and also less prone to errors.
Thank you very much, Noel. So I go back now to the live Q&A in Slido. So let's move on to the first question. So we have, as the process doesn't change, can you confirm that both EMA and NCAs will not use DADI to upload data in their internal product databases? In other words, if during a variation data changes, there is no need to update the DADI form. So any of the DADI PMS product owners would like to address this?
So I can address this. Unfortunately, this project doesn't have the remit to change the business process, but we do recommend that, of course, the DADI form is used to upload data to all regulatory systems. The form is the PEF form. It contains the XML that is being used to feed those systems. If you want those systems to be accurate, then please also correct your forms if something is wrong. Especially as part of the LOQ, I know there is a process discussion going on that this is actually happening, and I do hope people part of these discussions will decide to have an updated application form during the LOQ.
Thank you very much, Noel. Okay, let's jump to the next question. If the variation concerns, for instance, a change of MAH, will OMS need to be updated before submitting the EIF in the new web form? In other words, will industry need to update OMS XCVMPD before submission? This is a big change in process.
I can take this one as well. So if you want to change, well, let's not say change of the MAH because this is a transfer and this is not what the EF is used for. If you have a change on a manufacturer who is also part of OMS, you do need to have that manufacturer in OMS as you have it today. You have your former lock ID, you have your future lock ID, you're changing from one lock ID to the other. There is no change to how it works today, and the EF web form will do the exact same thing.
Sorry,
Thank you very
Christina.
much. Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. It's just to make a comment here on the transfer. So again, there is no change in the process. You need to provide your information on the EAF. You say, okay, this is the new MA holder. And then in XVMPD, you have to provide also the change of the transfer. So there is a whole section on the guidance for XVMPD explaining how the transfer is handled in XVMPD. So again, there is no change. And as Noel was saying, there is no change in OMS. You already need to have your information in OMS. So there is no change there as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much to both Noel and Marcus for your clarifications. Okay, let's go to the next question in the list. Regarding user access, what does MAH mean? Is it the global MAH containing all subsidiaries, or is each MAH handled separately?
I will take that one as well. MAH for us means an organization as it is in OMS. Now, one organization can have many addresses, meaning many locations, but it is still per country. So if you have an organization spanning 2 countries, it will have 2 organization entries. If you have products on both of them, you need to be authorized for both of these MAHs. And this is the important part here, and this is why we want to provide the possibility for IAM registration in advance, because I know very large companies, there are some of them, that have about 60 or 65 different organizations in Europe alone, do have their products scattered around, so different MAHs, although it's the same global company. Now, for those, we are aware you need some setup time, but you need to set these users up once and they will be associated and then able to use these. We will provide many different ways and hopefully easy features on how to set this up, how to provide access, and as part of the next system demo, we will show the 3 levels of access you can grant your users and what you need to do if you have a global company with multiple MAHs, or if you're a small one and using consultancies. So please join our next system demo where we will show this.
Thank you very much, Noel. Next question is, who is ultimately responsible for the data in PMS? Currently, there are changes made by EMA to XVMPD data without notifying the applicant. Will this change with PMS and DADI? How will applicants be informed of changes to their data? So maybe Marcus, as PMS product owner, can you address this?
Yeah, so
Thank you.
Well, it is not really true that we are doing changes without notifying the applicant. There is something called the third acknowledgement that we are sending the applicants when after the validation of the data submitted to XVMPD is changed. So yeah, there is a message saying which is the changes that we are doing. So as we've said in the webinar, any change that is done to XVMPD will be reflected in PMS and therefore will be reflected in DADI. We are also discussing how this validation of the data is going to be done in PMS. We already know and we have already heard that industry doesn't want to have a second XVMPD process, so we are also discussing how this is going to be done. But for the moment, at Go Live, which is the scope of this webinar, any change to XVMPD will be reflected in PMS, and obviously it will be notified to the applicant through the third acknowledgement as for the moment.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Okay, Next question, will there be a limit to the number of users per company that can be created on the Dadi platform?
I can take that. No, we're not foreseeing any particular limit for number of users per company. So just as you have registered your users, you can register as many as you need. Because different companies have different processes and different levels of requirements for users.
Thank you very much, Christina. Okay, so next question is, can Dadi web pages be filled in only manually?
I would say yes at the moment. You fill them in a web form. You can use browser plugins to automatically fill something that you have filled in already. There are things on the internet that, for example, keep an address book for you as soon as you add a person's detail that will suggest something that you have entered previously. So it should be quite fast. The architecture does allow for a submission via Fire only, but this is not yet fully implemented and will take some time because we also need a Fire, what is called a profile. So validation rules in order to submit these automatically, and those will only be created next year. So we do foresee an automatic submission at some point in time. We don't have it in October.
Thank you very much, Noel. Okay, next question is again on access management. So is there already a role available in the EMA account management for using Dadi, and which role is it?
At the moment, we only have the UAT roles to use for a set of testers in a sandbox environment. These are quite restricted yet because we are still testing this. Once this is fully implemented in about 3 weeks' time and fully tested, we will start sending out announcements on when you can actually request your account. So a separate announcement will be made and emails will be sent out for you to pre-register your account. Please don't register yet.
Thank you, Noel, for clarifying this aspect. Okay. So next question is related to Fire. With Fire XML format message and the new PDF format output, how the validation of the ECTD will work?
I can take that. So basically, because you will be generating a PDF rendition out from the web user interface, this PDF rendition will contain the Fire XML output. So it will still be a PDF. Hence, you will be including a PDF in your ECTD package. So there is no change in process. There is no need to change the ECTD validation criteria for now, and there should be no impact of this change, at least initially. There's no intention to check whether the existing interactive PDF form has been used or whether the Dadi form has been used using the ECTD validation criteria. So the process will remain as it is.
Thank you. Okay, now I see the next most voted question with 38 votes. Says, will multiple users be able to work on the same form?
So the simple answer is yes. We are currently implementing various features to enable this. So not only will multiple users be able to work on the same form, but also multiple users with different levels of access will be able to do so. For example, you can have a person with higher access who sees all products, who selects them, a person with lower access who doesn't see products from an organization to still work on the same form. So all of this is online, and I think we have foreseen all possible scenarios. I do hope so. And it will be able, when you create your form, as well as later on, to invite other people, either from your own organization or from a different company.
Thank you very much, Noel. Next question is which
I see that's welcome news. Judging from
seems so. Yeah. Okay, so we have another question. This is which web browsers are compliant with the new web form?
So officially, as we are developing this with Microsoft technology, of course, Microsoft tells us to please use Edge. And Edge works very well. I personally test with Chrome, which works perfectly as well in most of the later versions. We will be issuing a list of officially supported browsers, but at the moment I don't see any restrictions on the main browsers. At some point we will test the non-standard, well, the browsers not used as much as possible. Those should work. We have tested this slightly with mobile devices. I do not recommend it, although it shows up on a mobile device. The resolution is not ideal. We would like to have it in, ideally it's an HD screen with one of the three main browsers.
Thank you very much, Noel. So the next most voted question relates to IDMP. So did IDMP implementation deadlines change to February 2023 for caps and February 2024 for non-caps? Marcus, can you address this?
I can take this one. So yeah, there has been a change, and we have also announced this on the PMS webpage. So we ask you to please go to the webpage where you can find all the information about the timelines, etc., and more information there. So yeah, there has been a change, and it has been announced in the PMS webpage.
Thank you, Marcus.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have a question on timeline and next steps. When can the industry expect clear timeline on concrete next steps? When will we be able to have PMS access, even PD be switched off, PMS on, in order to contact tool vendors to implement IDMP and enable computer-to-computer exchange?
I can also take this one. So, well, the scope of this webinar is the go live, and that's why we have not provided more information on the next steps. We are discussing with all the stakeholders, NCAs, industry associations, etc., which should be the next steps, priorities, etc. So we will be able to provide more information when all those discussions have an outcome. So for the moment, we are now seeing what is going to happen at go live, what is also going to happen during the transition period of 6 months. And actually, we have given some information what will happen during next year. But all those questions here, until we don't have more clarity and a more concrete answer, and we are discussing these questions with the stakeholders, as I said, we are not able to provide more information here.
Thank you, Marcos. Okay, so next question is on the EIF. So will it be possible to make copies of an EIF which is prepared on global level, so country-specific EIFs can be completed on country level?
So at the moment, we do have this requirement from our experts, and it is a feature that is defined. It will most likely not make it to the October release. I do hope we will release it shortly after that. I know it is necessary. It didn't, unfortunately, make the cut of absolutely necessary, but we do want to bring it as soon as possible.
Thank you, Noel. Okay, next question. The current ECTD specification will not recognize a PDF from DAIDY versus the current form. How will the mandatories of DAIDY be enforced after April 2023? Are all agencies informed and on board? So, Christina, I'll give you the floor for this question.
Thank you. Indeed, it's correct. So the validation criteria will not recognize whether the interactive PDF or the web-based form has been used. Most likeliest scenario is that this will be through a manual process. Of course, this depends completely on the technical preparedness of the receiving regulator as well. They may have importing systems that will recognize whether it is the form with the DES XML or the FIRE XML, which would import that data into their regulatory systems. And this would be the most likeliest tool to recognize. Of course, we will have ongoing procedures that are already using that are using the existing PDF form and will be allowed to use that existing PDF form until the end of the procedure. And then there will be, during the transitional period, there will still be procedures starting using the PDF form. So there will be a lot of different permutations. So there probably is not one single response to this answer, and it may be somewhat semi-manual procedure for a period of time. Are all agencies informed and on board? We are regularly informing our business members through the CMDV and CMDH, obviously CMDH now at the moment, because the human forms are more relevant. And of course, there is also communication to the IT directors. So all NCAs are aware of this change and go live in October.
Thank you, Christina.
Christina, just before you continue, maybe just to say that we'll indeed be fielding questions, I think, for another 10 minutes or so. So we will not get through all the questions. And indeed, just to restate, we will not indeed commit to answering all the questions in this session or afterwards. What we will, of course, do is make this Q&A available, and so people can indeed read back indeed the questions and answers. And any questions that are asked, I mean, they are going to go on record, and we will look at indeed how best to address them, whether this is information that will end up in a guideline, in a training, or anywhere else. So even if you don't receive a direct answer to your question, it is, of course, input for us to understand how we can best support users. With that, indeed, we'll just we'll take indeed a couple more minutes for the questions, and then we have a question for the audience.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Joris, for these clarifications. Let's address the last ones, and then I will launch a poll to get your feedback. So, okay. If there are no free text fields, how will complicated scope and background info be included in the variation form?
So first of all, thank you for the question. This is why we do this webinar. I do want to stress the part and also make sure to clarify this point, we do allow free text changes. So especially on scope and background, we have even improved the free text change to allow for a rich text editor. So there are two huge fields at the moment where you can enter your precise scope and your background for change with screenshots, with bold text, red and colorful things, anything you want. And we do have the present and proposed free text as well, but we are working towards additionally having whatever is structured in PMS to also have dedicated fields for those. Now, this is not part of this go live, but it will be part of the next version. Nevertheless, there will always be free text changes. Only for those that have product fields, we will also provide those product fields.
Thank you, Noel. I see a lot of happy and liking reactions to this. Good. Will DD allow the reuse of the forms by creating copies of the existing forms to faster complete the creation of a new variation form? Noel, Christina?
I think we had that question already. We are starting and we are prioritizing the copy function. So this can be done. Of course, there is one more thing. Even after you submit your form, the form will always be in your web browser. So in your account, you can access a form anytime you want. You can change the form and do another export. So in theory, you could always have one form and just change slide things. Well, change, I don't know, a scope or so, do another export, change one more thing, do another export. So you have lots of PDFs, different PDFs with only one web form. But we do want to have the ability to copy the web form itself, of course, just in one of the future releases.
Thank you very much, Noel. I think we can now go to the last question, and then I will open for the poll. So if XEVMPD and OMS will be the databases for the new work form, what happens if XEVMPD and OMS is not up to date? Will submissions be, for instance, rejected?
So I can take this one. So in principle, MA holders and applicants are responsible to have XEVMPD and OMS data up to date. So again, it's your responsibility to have this information up to date. As we have been explaining during the whole webinar now, the data, the variation form will be having still free text. So most of the information that you will see will be free text for the moment. So there is not going to be any rejection in principle because of the data in XEVMPD or OMS is wrong. Actually, I mean, you should have this information up to date, so it shouldn't be wrong. There were more questions there about what happened if there is the structure of XEVMPD is not correct, etc. You can amend your products in XEVMPD if you have wrong data that you shouldn't. But again, this information should be responsibility of the applicant, and therefore you should have this information up to date.
Thank you very much, Marcos. Okay, so we will now close the Q&A part. As anticipated by Joris, we will collect and make available these lists, and we have tried as much as possible to include answers also in writing to those questions that were not addressed live. Thank you all for your active participation during this live Q&A. It has been really appreciated by the project teams. We now want to get your feedback through a very quick poll. So it's just one question, and I will now launch it through Slido. So by using the same QR code and the same code, so 016740, you can join at slido.com and provide your feedback to this session. So the question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this webinar to appear? So please kindly include your votes. And of course, we will take into consideration any feedback you may want to share with us. I see a lot of reactions, happy reactions. Good to know. Okay, so Joris, while I will keep, of course, this open to give all people time to connect to this new Slido session and be able to cast their vote, but I will give you back the floor for closing statements. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. And indeed, thank you to all the speakers and the active participation from the audience. These sessions are here to ensure that we give you our latest understanding and planning and expectations for both the EAF web forms and for PMS. Again, to repeat, a recording will be available. We'll indeed make sure that the Q&A out of this session, that we have an extract that's made available, and the PowerPoint presentation itself, of course, we'll share. That'll be on the eSubmissions website. And as we move forward for user acceptance testing, for go live, for the transition, we'll indeed keep on sharing with you as those plans indeed solidify and move forward. And we expect to keep on doing that, of course, also for the next iterations, because this is just going to be the first go live for the variations form. but also need for other forms, for new features, we'll keep on doing that. So thank you for joining us this morning, and we very much look forward to seeing you in the next sessions and next engagement opportunities. So with that, wishing everyone a great Monday and a great week.